Good afternoon and welcome to Chapter Day. Reading from Home Again, and we're on Chapter 13. And this is the first chapter where we really get some insight into Morning Glory Wilson. And I wrote this chapter with a little more detail, thinking that at some point I may like to make her the heroine of her own story, so you get a little bit of a feel for what motivates her. So, Chapter 13. Morning Glory Wilson was screwed, and not in the fun, sensual, dirty sense of the word. She was screwed in the if you screw this up, you're out of a job sense of the word. The network boss's words were still ringing in her ears. Glory, you're a bitch with a sweet face. That's what got you this job. That's what's kept you on the air this long. If you want to stay on the air, you better get your candy ass to Wisconsin and help write a story that will sell. I don't care if it's a crash and burn story or a story of redemption, but it better be good. If anyone else walks off the air during the first 30 seconds of an interview with you, I'll personally see to it no one hires you again. You'll be flipping burgers alongside all the other undergrads in Queens. What her boss didn't know, what no one knew, not even Garrett, was that his prediction of her burger-flipping employment was what she feared most. Not the burger flipping, but the obscurity and the abject fear that she was powerless to support herself. Those fears drove her like nothing else. Not love, not fear of death, not even getting eaten by sharks and feeling every painful bite till the ocean was stained with her blood. She'd gone back to the apartment she shared with Garrett and was hit in the face with a sense of emptiness. He'd left everything except for that watercolor painting of pink she despised. She'd been enthralled by the cost of the thing when she saw it. She'd been relatively new to the city then. Money didn't have the same meaning in Manhattan than it did in rural Minnesota. Garrett misinterpreted her reaction as genuine appreciation for the art. When he surprised her with it, she didn't have the heart to tell him the truth. She did have the foresight to know that anyone that generous with his money was worth keeping. A sharp pang of loss flowed through Glory as she surveyed the apartment. The security she thought she found in Garrett wasn't there anymore. That security hadn't been there for at least a year. The more she pushed Garrett, the less he did. The more she tried to get him to work, the less he wrote. Only Garrett's papers, his passport, and the cash he thought he kept hidden from her were gone. Everything they'd amassed as a couple was untouched. His closet was still filled with his clothes and his shoes. All of his stuff was there, but the feeling of abandonment remained. Perhaps because he hadn't cared enough about their life together to take any of it with him. Glory knew she should feel something more than irritation that she'd wasted the last 2 years with Garrett as he spiraled downward into his own obscurity. She thought she loved him once, as much as she loved anyone since high school. But she was self-aware enough to know that if she was going to invest her fleeting youth and her limited time on anyone, that someone needed to be at least as successful as she was. After her first gut-wrenching experience with the soul-sucking roller coaster of love, Glory swore she'd never put her heart above her well-being again. She'd taken a risk with Garrett. She'd hung on longer than she should have. She also gave him a spot on her show when she knew she shouldn't. He had little to give by that point, and Glory hated to be the one doing the saving. It just wasn't her gig. She resented it. It never brought anything but trouble, heartache, and pain. This time her heartache was limited, more of a sting to her ego than her heart. But the trouble with her flight of fancy with Garrett could end up giving her was endless and excruciatingly painful. Glory didn't want to go backwards. The only way forward was to move up and on, Losing what she'd accomplished thus far was not an option. So Glory hired a service to pack all of Garrett's stuff and send it to the only address she had from his hometown, which was for the woman who'd contacted her about Garrett's father's letters. He could either get his things from her or not, up to him. Glory took her jewelry and the portable items she actually cared about that fit in her market bag and her pull behind. The remainder of her things she'd have boxed and shipped as well. Hers wouldn't go to her hometown. They would go into a storage unit she kept not far from here. If she was going to start again, she needed different things around her. No sense dwelling on the old. Then she put up the apartment on the market. It was a nice place with an enviable address and an elite zip code. As Glory took one last look around, the apartment she wanted so badly at the time, she wondered why it never really felt like she lived there. It felt more like a long-term hotel rental. She was on her own again. This time, she was fighting for her professional identity. This time, the fight wasn't just for survival. It was for everything about herself she worked so hard to create. That she could lose who she was scared the living hell out of her. It scared her almost as much as going on the road to flyover country. You've got 6 weeks, a camera crew, a bus, and 1 assistant. Every morning you'll be live for 3 7-minute segments. Every night you'll produce copy for approval, although some of the segments will be created on the spot. Make them count, Glory. It's this or we buy what's left of your contract out right now. We'll use a fitness clause if we must. If you make us do that, you'll get nothing, and you'll be blacklisted. Unfortunately, Glory's first stop on this journey through hell would be the same as her last. Fish Creek, Wisconsin. The network wanted bookend pieces of Garrett's story. From there, Glory's itinerary moved from small town to small town, from state to state, with a few open spots along the way. She'd be in most of the Midwestern states, with a jaunt up to Ontario in there as well. Flyover country, the heartland, the heart and soul of America's farmland. Yippee. She'd also be perilously close to the one place she never wanted to go again. Home. And that is the end of chapter 13. Tomorrow we'll pick up chapter 14 and we'll be with Garrett again. So thank you for joining me. I hope you have a really wonderful day. Be well. See you tomorrow.